Okay people, so in this section we're going to cover the Fly-Elise software. So if I just bring up the, bring this across to the centre screen. What we're talking about here is the Immersive Calibration Pro and the Immersive Display Pro, but at the moment we're doing the calibration, so we're going to talk about the Calibration Pro. So the very latest one is 3.0.2. So if we open up the folder of 3.0.2, you'll notice within the folder we have 3 applications. One is service, don't worry about that, that doesn't concern us at the moment. You also have a client application, and down the bottom you have a server application. I'll just drag this over so you can see what I'm talking about, and a single application. So when we're talking about the clients, we want a client to be running on each of these 3 projectors for my particular setup, and for some other people who have the same thing, exactly that as well. So in this case we're going to select the client, so we want to double click on the client and get it running. So we'll just get rid of this in the background. So we now have a screen come up here. At the top of it, it says Immersive Calibration Pro, gives you the version 3.0.2, and it says client not connected, which means that the client is running in the background. It's not actually connected to any other computer that may be able to manipulate the images. So to start off with, in this case, because I've set my NVIDIA up, we have 3 separate sections of the screen. So what we need to do now is select each of those screens and select one by one. So that's a 1 by 1 on that one, 1 by 1 projector here, and 1 by 1 projector here. So now it's coming up and telling us that each of the displays have 1 projector connected to it. So we're still running 3 projectors of 1 computer, but each of them are individual projectors. So we now have that waiting and sitting in the background. We can move down to our other computer, which we're going to use to manipulate the images. So we will go to a similar sort of setup here. Sorry. The Optify. So we have Fly-Elise Calibration Pro running on this computer as well, and if we open it up we'll have the install folder, and if we go down further we will see exactly the same thing. We've got service, client, server and single, all the applications. On this one we're going to select server, so we double click on server. Now you have 2 sections here that you can select from, either create a new project or load a project file. So when we're starting out we select create a project file or a new project and select the next button. We'll just get rid of this background here. So the next section we come to, it says no scaling, or if you drop down the menu here you can select different types of scaling. Well, we don't want any scaling. Stacking, sorry, not scaling, it's stacking, and that's if you're using a camera system you can actually stack the photos one on top of the other. So we're not going to be using any stacking in this, so we just select the next. It will now ask you what sort of screen you have. There are, if you drop down the menu you'll see a whole stack of different types of screens. Our screen is a cylinder single curved cylinder. So I'm going to select that, and then just underneath it you can either map it on a camera or map it on the projector. So we're going to be doing map on projector. Select next. Now what's happening is Fly-Elise is actually starting up on this particular computer, and in a second we have a screen. So when we get to this screen it's now asking us what our projectors are and in what configuration. So we're going to select the configuration. So first of all, do a right button click and go down and select 3 projectors by 1, because we've actually got 3 of the projectors on one computer. That's our configuration. The next thing you need to select is what sort of configuration they are. So we have high definition projectors, and they are set up at 1920 by 1080. So once you make your selection there, hit select, and now you'll see that I have 3, I'll take this out, three projectors exactly as I have on the top screen. So nothing is connected at the moment, so we need to tell it to connect to these 3 projectors. So the way you do that is come over here on the first part of the screen, which is a third of that screen, and if we double click on it, we will come up with the connection, which is up the top here. So in order to do that, we will select the first one. My main computer is called Big Huey, so if you have a look in the sub menu of the computer, it'll say projector 1, projector 2, and it'll say projector 1 on each of those, but they're in chronological order. So we're going to select 1 for that one and go select. All of a sudden our screen is connected over the side here. If we go to the second one and select the second projector, this one will come on as number 2, and if we go to our third one and click on the third projector and go select, now this will come up as projector 3. So you can see each of those projectors, there's number 3, there's number 2, and we can't quite see around the other side, but projector 1 is running as well. So that's how we get our connection through this main computer talking to all these. So now we're going to go into the various sections that breaks down and shows you how to manipulate the images via this computer onto these. So we have a proper communication going on here, which means we will be able to do a proper calibration. If you get to this section and that is not happening, and the server is not talking to the main computer that's displaying these 3 screens, then you have a communications problem. You need to go back and sort that out. 9 times out of 10 it will be to do with the hub. So check your hub connections, make sure those 2 computers are talking to one another, and they're on the same network. I'm not going to delve into networks, it's a very complex issue, but that's where your problem will be. So we're going to follow on from here. That's this section, just showing you how to set up the client, and now we've showed you how to set up the server. The next section will cover how to get right into it. Now that we've selected and have 3 clients connected, we're going to go to our next section, which gives us the actual manipulation of the screens. So the very first thing we need to do is look on the right hand side, our icons here. Tools is the top one, settings. So we're looking at the second icon called settings. So if we click on that, it'll come up with the first sub menu, which is projectors, the second one, which is screens and views. That's exactly what we're looking for, screens and views. So select that. We'll end up with this dialog box here. Now, looking at this logically, if you read it, it says number of views, we have 3. So if you only have 2 projectors, obviously you would select 2 in there. But in this case, we have 3. So before we go any further, what we're going to do is set up and tell it some of the information that we gleaned earlier on and wrote down, because I told you to write it down, and we're going to put that in here. Now we can do it manually here, or we can do it via a graphical section here, which gives you a look at how your screen is. Now, it comes generically with a 4 meter width here, but we're going to punch in 4.6 because that's what the width of my screen is. So you can either use the up and down buttons, or you can physically write it in. Oh, sorry, punch it in. So there we go, 4.6 meters. And then of course make sure you do the next one, which is the radius. So obviously if that's 4.6 meters and you have a completely half a circle, then you know that your radius is going to be 2.3 or half of what that width was. So do that, put in your 2.3 or whatever yours is. So mine is 2.3. And then the last little section we need to do here is to tell it, oh, by the way, once you punch in those that information there, as in the radius and that width, it will automatically populate this little section here, which tells you what your angle is going to be. So our angle is 180 degrees, which is correct. This is a 180 degree screen. The next thing we have to do is tell it how high our screen is. Now, as I told you earlier on, my screen is 1.6 meters high, even though from the floor to the top it's over 2 meters. So the white section I've painted on my screen is 1.6 meters. So that's how high I want my screen to project. So change this to 1.6 meters in my case. Whatever yours is, if you're 2 meters, then leave it at 2 meters. Now, absolutely imperative that you get these measurements correct. If you do not get these correct and do not punch in the right measurements here, everything is going to be wrong and you'll be constantly chasing your tail trying to get things to look correct. So we come back here to this screen again. So it's telling us now that our begin angle is at minus 80 degrees over there and minus 90 degrees, sorry. And over here, by the time it gets to here, is at 90 degrees. So that's a full 180. So that's exactly right. Now our radius is 2.3, which is correct. Our beginning angle, because it's 1.6, our beginning angle is minus 80 down the bottom and plus 80 on the top. So that gives us 1.6. So those sections are correct. There is no tilt angle because we don't have any curvature on the screen. And this is the section that we were talking about before, about columns and rows. Now, as I said to you before, I'm going to have 6 columns, which is the generic setting, and I'm going to have 6 rows, not 6 columns. I'm having 22 columns and 6 rows. Now, again, it's auto-populated the column width and the rows. Now, these are physical dimensions on the screen. So if you have a look, the actual column length, and that's in height, is 0.32, and the row length is 0.26. Sorry, round the other way. So it's 0.2667 high, and the width of the column is 0.3284 wide. So if you really wanted to cheat at this, what you would do is make yourself up a little piece of cardboard that was of those dimensions, and you could actually physically plot that on your screen all the way around. Now what you would need to do is, once you do that, work out a way of making a mark on your screen without physically doing it permanently, so that you could tell where the intersecting points were. Now this is another way of doing calibration. A lot of people use little round markers or little square markers with a crosshair in them. I did this once before, but unfortunately, being that I can't get to the front of the screen, I could only do the sides. So if you have access to your whole screen, you will get an absolutely perfect calibration. If you use that method, just go around and make yourself a cardboard template, mark it around there, use your round little templates or your square ones with the crosshairs on them, put them in the corners all the way around. Once you do that, when it comes to calibration, it will be such a breeze. So it's just a matter of lining them up on those crosshairs. Okay, so we don't have that availability at the moment, so we're going to carry on with what we've got. So that's that section there in the screens. We go back on the top of the tab there to views again, come back and we'll just set up our views. So now we have view 1. Come down here and we've got our columns. So now we have to split up our screen into our columns and our rows. Now I'm going to put this graphic up on the screen here to show you how I did mine with a total of 22 columns. It is a little bit complex, doesn't make a lot of sense originally, but as you'll see, when we get to the actual calibration, it works out absolutely perfect. So our beginning column, because we're starting right over that side over there, is number 1. Now it asks the number of columns in that first view or off that first projector. And in actual fact, that is 8 for me. So I need to put in the number 8 there. So that's stating that there are 8 columns in that first view, and at the beginning of the column is number 1. Underneath that, we've got the rows. So our beginning row is number 1, and our number of rows is 6. Now that measurement there is not going to change for the whole of this calibration, because as you get to view 2 and view 3, there are only ever going to be 6 columns. So that 1 and 6 is going to be in all 3. So once we've done view 1, we come back up to this little icon here. There's a drop down menu here which gives you view 2 and view 3. So we've done view 1, let's now go to view 2. We come down to view 2, go back to the columns again. So my beginning column for 2, taking into account the overlap on the left hand side, we want that to start at number 7. So that will be our beginning column at number 7, and the amount of columns in this section are 10. So there are 10 columns in the center section. And of course underneath, as I said before, the rows are 1 and 6. Right? So that's 7 and 10 in the second one, 1 and 8 in the first one, and now we go to view 3, which is this section here, or this projector, the third projector. So when we get to here, our beginning column is number 15. And the amount of columns in this one is 8 again. So we had 8 in the first one, 10 in the second one, and 8 in the third one. And what that gives you is a proper perspective. When you finish your calibration, we seem to have more in the center there than we do the side, and it's because you're getting a better perspective. Now you can muck around with this all you like, you can change these columns. Sometimes you might find that your view looks better if you increase the columns on the side or whatever. It's totally up to you. But after years of doing this, I've discovered that this ratio is the best that I've ever come across. Now don't forget to go down and put your rows in again. That is 1 and 6 again. That does not change, as I said before. Once you've done all that, then you can actually go close. Now all of a sudden we've got a hatchet design here so we can see what's going on. As I said, this right hand column is what we use most of the time here. So if we come down here to where it says project, and the drop down menu here says black on all the projectors, let's do that, and then all of a sudden you'll have black on all of your projectors. If we go back across there and go to the next one down, identify all the projectors, you'll end up with the 1, 2, 3 again, showing you the name of the computer, the size of the screen, and that it's on a single stack. If we go to the next drop down menu there, it is on markers, so it comes up with a whole bunch of cross markers, and the next drop down menu is a screen grid, which is extremely helpful because that's what we'll end up using when we start doing our proper alignment. So you can see by here 2122 is, you can't see it, but it does say 22 over here, so the last column is number 22, which is shown here, and on the left hand side number 1 is our starting column. So that's all looking pretty good at the moment. And I'm going to finish this section at that. So what we've done now is we've done our setup within Calibration Pro, and the next section we'll do is show you how to do alignments and the various things that you can use to get that correct. I'm just going to show you the basics at the moment, and you can go through and work out how to use them yourself and how to manipulate that image, but I'll just give you the basics. So I'm not going to select any of these down here, so that just means that each and every one of these is wild. Basically it's on its own. If you can see, I'm moving on this screen the pixel, but up here on the screen it's actually moving the screen in real time. So we'll just put that back to where it was to start with, and we're going to look at getting that, oh by the way, you can use this little button down here to make the screen a little bit further back so you can manipulate it a bit better. So we'll go through and get all our top properly. Now, I'm not sure whether we can get that in the camera. So we're going to be doing the top, so I'll just make sure that all the top is right. So looking at that, roughly correct. That one's about at the top. We'll try and make them all uniform. Bring that one down a little bit. Oh, by the way, there is shortcuts for this as well. If you use the control button and the plus and minus, oh sorry, not plus and minus, the up and down sideways buttons, it makes it a heck of a lot easier. So we're all bringing them down, just that schmick underneath the black line, and that's basically how you do it. Now we're not taking into account the actual perspective of this at all we're after is uniformity. So you can see by that we now have a nice straight line right across the top. If we were to go through and do that with all the lines now, we would end up with something really nice. But if you do get used to exploring this interface, you'll find that what we could have done there was select that. Once we do that line, we do everything underneath it, and it becomes a much better way of doing it. There's also some sections here which allow you to do automatic auto mapping, which is very good, because what it does, it allows you to select the outside and then it will automatically map the things in the middle, and it'll give you a much more accurate setup. So anyway, that's basically what you do. If you were to have earlier mapped out your exact column width and height with the template and have the little crosshairs, if I had the crosshairs here now, it would be simply a matter of moving these points, these crosshair points, onto the actual crosshair, which is why I say to you it makes it a heck of a lot easier. We look at, when we come to the blending side of it, I'll just give you an example here. I'm going to load the last calibration that I did, and that way we'll have a pretty close sort of setup, and you can see how after a while, when you get used to it and you get your calibration right, how we look at doing the merging. So I'll just close off here and I'll come back with the calibration that I used last time, which still needs some work done on it. Okay, we are back. By the way, I'm very sorry about the banding that we've got on this. I don't know, well, I might have the wrong setting set up in my GoPro to pick up the non-banding, but anyway, hopefully you can put that aside. Now if we have a look, I do have a different calibration going on here now. Just showing you that screen grids where they overlap. So what I have now, I've had to go back and do another calibration because what happened was I didn't have a real good colour saturation with all of my projectors. So I actually went back to each of the projectors, reset them back to factory default, which is a good thing to do, by the way. If you start getting calibration mismatch in the way of colour or gamma, it's always a good idea to think about resetting your projectors, which is exactly what I did. Now, in doing so, I had forgotten that I had a certain amount of, and I'll remember the name of it in a second because it was the one I forgot earlier on. No, it's just escaping me at the moment. But it's the way that the screen is projected downwards, and it actually takes that out so that it gives you a nice straight edge. I cannot remember the name of that. Anyway, I'll put it on the video when I finish it. So I actually had that adjusted on all three screens, so that when I did the reset, of course it takes that back out. And I had thought about doing this calibration without that setting in there anyway. So I did. I've actually left it out and I've gone back, and this was my original calibration that I had, which was nearly perfect. But it has the setting from original, and now I'm going to go back and adjust it so that it doesn't have that setting. If that makes any sort of sense. So it's pretty close actually. We've done the original calibration and it's not too bad. So you can see that our overlaps here aren't too bad at all. It's just a matter of cleaning up those overlaps and getting them right again. So I'm going to go through and do that. But before we go any further, I'd like to also show you a section here which is really important for a correct finished product. And it's one we didn't touch on before. It's our third button down, and it's called the multi-frustum. So if I bring that up, open up that screen, hopefully you'll be able to see that. I'll just readjust. So that's the multi-frustum section. Now in that multi-frustum section, it gives you a physical view of what your screens look like and the projections from your projector, from each projector. So within that section you've got projector 1, projector 2 and projector 3. You need to set up your eye points or your viewpoint, and then underneath you've got the frustum set up and some other sections here and there. So let's talk about firstly setting this up correctly. So what you need is the positions of the eye point. Now obviously your center eye point should be at 0 because that's where you should be looking straight ahead. So obviously the one on the left no, cancel that. Sorry, I'm talking rubbish there. Yes, sorry. Let me go back and do that again. Cancel. Edit. Okay, so with this, we're looking at projector 1 here and the eye point. So my eye point for this is 0.07 of a meter in X, Y is 0, and Z is 0. Now they're only coordinates, but what they do is they give you the screen coordinate for our eye points. So they're very difficult to attain. You will have to play around with this manually until you get it correct. And also with the frustum position. You can hit the calculate button and you can either do single or all of them, and it will do an automatic selection there. And I needed to do that anyway because now I have a different setup within my projection because of the different way I've set up my screens. Now I am going to output this to view groups, and this is a very important section as well, view groups. So when you want to select, when you want to output this to P3D V 4.3, sorry, let me get this right. If you want to export to 3.3 plus, so anything above 3.3 uses view groups now. So if you're using 4 or 4.2, 4.1 or 4.2 in P3D, you can export as a view group. There has been many discussions on the net about view groups and whether they're better than the exported FXML files. I'm not going to get into the argument, only to say that view groups are a lot easier to use. There's no cutting, pasting, mucking around, and I've even heard people go to the trouble of exporting view groups and then cutting and pasting the information out of that into their view groups, which I cannot fathom why you would go to that much trouble anyway. View groups are bulletproof. Once you extract a view group, it's just a matter of putting it in the right place and it just automatically loads up. So I'm going to go through that section and show you how to do that. So in order to export to a view group, you need to select asymmetric over here on the left hand side. Once you select asymmetric, when you do an export, it will allow you to do it to a view group. If you do not have that selection there, the asymmetric, when you go to export the file, which I'll show you in a second, you will only be able to export it as an FXML file, which you can still use in 4.0 and 4.1 and 4.2. But I say to you, look at both sides of it, and for me, the view groups were so much simpler, and I didn't see a great deal of difference frame-wise or performance-wise between view groups and FXML files. So for those geniuses out there that know how to get the last drop out of their computers, well, good luck to them. But I'm just saying, for this tutorial, I'm going to select asymmetric. I'm going to do the calculation on all of the projectors, which looks good now to me, and it's encompassing the whole screen, which is good. Once you've done that, you can close that section. Once you've got yourself a fairly decent calibration on the screen here, which I don't at the moment, but if I did, I would come down here to the calculation. The calculation, if you click on it, has three sections. The first of which is a single virtual camera. You need to do the single virtual camera first, which it's doing at the moment. It's calculating the alignment. When it's finished, it'll bring up this test pattern. The test pattern is for you to look at and say, oh no, I don't like the way this is blending here or there or whatever. Go back and redo it until you're satisfied. When you are satisfied with that one, then go to the next one, which does a multi camera warping setup, and it uses this setup here. Now this one is particularly good because it allows you to go within your cockpit and make sure that I'll just take this camera off and show what I'm talking about here. That this red line here aligns with the center of your cockpit. As long as you do that, you will have a almost perfect viewpoint from within the cockpit after you've done your calibration. Now I don't think you can get that. I could stand corrected here, but I'm pretty sure this is not available in the normal Immersive Display Pro. So you do need to go into Calibration Pro to get that sort of alignment there and get it absolutely spot on. So now what I'm going to do, you can see this misalignment that's going on here between the screens. I'm going to go through now and do this correctly, do the alignment properly, and then I will come back and show you what it looks like when it's done correctly and we're ready to do the export to view group files. So we have been away and we have been doing our final setup here. Now what I'm going to do is show you how we do the outputs to our files. So hopefully we can see what's going on here. As you can see in the background, I've got one of the finished outputs. You can change that to the what do they call that? The 3D tunnel. So you can see we've got a pretty sweet sort of wraparound projection going on here. It's not 100% perfect, but it's good enough for our purposes here, because I'm going to come back and do this at a later stage with the dots. So anyway, if I'm happy with that, I'll come down to my setup here, and I'm going to the bottom button that says export. I'm going to click on that. Now I'll take this a little bit closer. You can see exactly what we're doing here. Okay, so when you go to export, it brings up this dialog box. So you don't have a choice of whether or not you can do the single frustum, so you do have to output a single frustum. We'll just cancel this for a second, go back to the second button that I showed you here, which is the 3D frustum setup. Now, if you are exporting to view groups, you need to have this thing selected here that says asymmetric. So once you've selected that, you will now be able to export to a view group file. Always a good idea after you've selected that in there to go back and do the calibrations again. Things may have changed just slightly. So once you're happy with the single, then do the multiple virtual frustum. And once you've done that, there's also a third one here that says blending and black offset. Do that one as well. So all three of those. Okay, once they're all done and you're happy with what you see in the background, hit the export button. Now we come back up here. It's also going to output multi-frustums, which is what you want for your Immersive Display Pro. Then when you look down at the multi-view frustums here, it's got FSX / P3D V1, so we don't want that. Prepared 3D 2 and V3, well, we don't want that. Prepared 3D V3.3 Plus, which is where they started doing view groups. So we do want that selected. It's already selected for us. Then there's some offsets here for X-Plane, which we don't need. X-Plane again, DCS World, a general frustum for other different things. You can do a template or frustum preview image. Well, we don't need any of those. All we need is those three, which is a single frustum, multi-frustum, and the Prepare 3D View Groups XML file. So we come down a little bit further on this dialog box, and we'll see that we're not really worried about these things here. Shouldn't be touching any of those. They'll come out as they've already been preset. The export folder, work out where you're going to send it to. So in my case, on my desktop, I've got a March results folder. So I'm just going to put it in the March results folder. So I select the folder. Now underneath there's an export file name prefix. So if you want to put a prefix before it, do so. If you don't, then just delete that out and put no prefix, and it'll put its own name on there. So once you've done all that, hit the export button. You'll notice there's some stuff going on in the background. When it's completed, you'll get a dialog box come up and say calibration results have been saved. So you can now close that. Now I'm going to close down the whole shaboom there. Go back out to our March results folder, which was on the desktop, and you will notice that we now have, by the way, my big computer in the background that I'm running this from is called Big Huey. So that's why you'll see there's a multi Big Huey we've got a ProCalib file, another ProCalib file, third ProCalib file, and then we go single, 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 single. Well, I actually don't need those singles, so I am going to delete those singles. I don't really need any of them. So I'm going to delete them out before they cause any sort of confusion. This is our project file that we use to do the whole thing, so we're not going to touch that. We'll leave that in there. And you'll notice on the bottom we also have a view groups file. So that view groups file is what we'll put in our P3D, and it will automatically have the view groups all set up in it. So now what we need to do is take these output files and export them to our other computer. Now, if you have a network running on your computer, like I do, you can simply export it via your network. Okay, so now I'm going to copy that folder, the March results, and I'm going to put it in my public documents. And there it goes, it's been put over into my public documents. I can actually shut this PC down now, I do not need it. Now up on my main PC, I'll go back here, find that March folder. So here's my March results that I exported over. So I'm just going to copy them. And simply paste them to my desktop. And once that's done, open it up, make sure we have got those particular files that we exported out. Okay, so we've got a view groups file, and then we've got these three files. One each of those is a XML file that is for each of the views from the three projectors. So we want to do, firstly, grab our view groups file, do a copy of it, and then we want to go to our C drive, do a view all. So in your options section, you want to change this view to show hidden files, folders, and drives. Once you do that, when you open up your C drive, you'll see the program's data folder. Open up that program's data folder, open up Lockheed Martin, open up P3D, and if you go all the way down to the bottom, you'll see there is currently a view groups file there. So we don't really want to destroy that one, so what we'll do is copy it. Go back up to the top, make ourselves a folder within that folder. And that'll be our backup folder, and we'll just paste that into there. So now we can go back up one, back into the P3D file, open up those March results, copy the view groups file, and now paste that we want to paste that into the folder and replace the file in the destination. We got no problems about doing that because we have just backed up the original into this new folder here. So we have an original if something goes wrong. So that's our view groups part of it. The next part we want to do is putting those particular files, these ProCalib files, into their proper spot. So what we do now is we will open Immersive Display Pro. As I said, this is 3.0.1. And now what we want to do is go 3 by 1. Oops, sorry, that's not right. We want to go 1 by 1 on each of these here, just to start with. And what that does is clear out what was there before, because I had a previous installation there. So now what we want to do, we want to point those files that we've just output into that spot there. So what I'm going to do is just put this folder away where it should be first. Okay, now we've opened up our Immersive Display Pro. You'll notice that we've got the 3 screens here running on Immersive Display Pro, because we've just told it we have 3 by 1. So we have 3 separate views, if you like. View number 1, do a right button click and go up to External Calibration. Now point it to wherever you've put those files, and in my case I've got it in my extras folder on the Fly-Elise in the March results section. Now hopefully you'll have your projector set up as 1, 2, 3, which makes it very, very simple. I'm hoping that I have 2. So you select your top one as the first. Go to the second one, do exactly the same, external and multi again. And a third one, external calibration, and put in the third one. Now, once you've done that, make sure you go down the bottom here and hit save. That will save the current configuration in Immersive Display Pro. Now, I do find I'm having an issue with this current version of Immersive Display Pro in that I cannot turn off the window warping, and I can't turn it on or off, so I'm stuck basically with it being on all the time, which is not a big issue because you really do want it on anyway. Now, the other issue here is to make sure you're using DWM as the Windows Desktop Warping Management. Make sure you have that set. So once you have this all input, the next process is going into your P3D and starting up your calibration. So we'll do that right now. We'll go in here and start P3D, run it as the administrator. Okay, so we now have the start screen come up. So now what I'm just going to do is, oops, where are we? Quite literally grab the screen and drag it over to the center screen. So here's our aircraft, our weather on the right left hand side, our location and our time and season. So obviously you should have your P3D all set up, and you can change your location if you so desire. So we're just going to go OK, let it load up. So you'll notice that it's only loading on the center screen. Okay, so our center screen starts up, and to organise our P3, our wraparound or our Immersive Display Pro to operate, we have to make sure that our menu's not hidden. Once you go to a menu, go to the Views section and go down to View Group Management. When you come into View Group Management, you'll see on the left hand side you've got displays and configuration here, and then underneath you've got view groups. Well, there'll be very little in here if you don't have a view groups file, but because we've used Immersive Calibration Pro, we now have a folder there called Immersive Calibration Pro. Sorry, it's a file. So if we open up that file there just by clicking on the little sub arrow, you'll see that we've got Projector 1, Projector 2 and Projector 3. So if we just go into them and have a look, this is the most important thing of the lot, to make sure your display IDs match your projectors. So that is display ID 1 for Projector 1. Select Projector 2, you should have display ID 2 there, and Projector 3 with display ID 3. So if you have all that set up correctly there, you're ready to go. So select OK. Then you can come out. Now I don't have Immersive Display Pro running here at the moment, or in actual fact I do, but what happened was I started it too late. I'll just close that down because it's not actually functioning at the moment. So when you have done that section there with the view groups, you can now just do a right button click anywhere on the screen and come down here to view groups. See where it's got none selected at the moment. If we now select Immersive Calibration Pro, all three screens will light up. So we now have our Calibration Pro working and our view groups working within P3D. We don't have Immersive Display Pro running at the moment, so what I'm going to do now is go back out of P3D, exit P3D properly, waiting up here to make sure that P3D shuts down first. Now that it's closed down, I can start up Immersive Display Pro, and again the same situation where it's starting over on the left hand side here, because that's number one. We'll see that this is all operating properly, and the window warping is already done. So we'll shut that down. Now we can go back and start P3D again. Right button click, run as administrator. Again, it's starting over the left hand screen. So now we have it started up in the center screen, and you'll notice that the edge blending is on both sides this time, telling us that the center screen is going to be blended on both sides, which means that it is the center screen. So again, we'll go back to just automatically starting up. Now what is going to happen, because we already set up those three views with view groups, when it starts this time, it should start the full three screens already ready to go. And now we should start up here with a fully calibrated screen. And there we go. That's how it's done. We have a full 360 degree screen here. I'll just take the video off and show it to you live. So if we go inside the cockpit and have a look from in here, you'll see that the views are almost perfect. I do have still a little bit of a colour mismatch with this right hand screen compared to the other two. So I'm probably going to have to do a little bit of colour adjustment there just to get them looking exactly the same. But the strange thing about it is, in some circumstances, in lighter circumstances, you'll find that those screens look exactly the same. So it's one of those things where you could be chasing your tail forever. But you'll also notice that we are spot on in the center of the aircraft here from the viewpoint. And if I sit in the cockpit seat just about here, you'll note that it's just about spot on as well. And because of Calibration Pro, the viewpoint is quite good from the co-pilot seat as well. So that's it, people. That's how we've done it. And that's our finished result. So I hope you enjoyed the tutorial. Please give me some feedback if you want more explanation on things. I'll try and up the content a little bit if I can help anybody out, and that'll be good. And please take some time and view some of my other videos on the UK tour and some of the earlier tours as well. So that's it from Frank Cooper signing off. Catch you all later. Bye for now.